My name is Deirdre Butler, and I'm actually from Dublin City University. I was and still am a teacher. I started life as an elementary school teacher. Don't worry about taking notes as well. I'll give you the presentation, okay? So it's fine, okay? I'd rather people engage and talk, okay, than trying to write down notes. When I started and I was working as an elementary school teacher. And then I was a teacher for a maths resource. And then I was a teacher of the travelling community. We have a travelling community in Ireland. And I was a travelling teacher of the travelling community as well. And then I was a deputy or vice principal of a school. And then I realised to get anything really done, I needed to go to Teacher Education College, because it was there you could interact with new teachers coming out and develop other programmes too. So I've been there for a number of years now, and my big passion is how to use digital technologies in learning. But I really believe that at the really fundamental, sort of underneath everything, is good teaching, okay? So if you have bad pedagogy to begin with, technology is not going to make it any better, okay? What we really have to think about is, what do we really want to do with our students? And I'm trying to work out what sort of age level different people teach. So if we can sort of have a show of hands, and then I can do a sort of I have lots of different examples and I can show people. So those people who actually teach in, is there anybody here who teaches in kindergarten? Great, okay, so I have some kindergarten people, okay, good. Is there anybody who teaches, let's say, in grades 1 to 3? Grades 1 to 3, okay, great. And if I have anybody here who teaches in grades 4 to 6, okay, and is there anybody then outliers who teach at high school or whatever, or other areas? So you're high school? Are you all high school? No, other areas as in? Teacher training. Excellent. So you're doing teacher education as well? Okay, so you'll be teaching teachers across, what other teacher educators have I got here? So I have one teacher educator, two teacher.
Arabic for non-native K to 4.
Okay, so a lot of the stuff we can do as well is actually you can use in your teaching too. So what I'm trying to do is, if I show examples, try to think, okay, how could I use this for my students, okay, regardless of the age grouping, okay, and the principles are the same. What has happened, particularly with the digital technologies, is when we were telling stories and we had to go to school before, a lot of the stories we told initially were oral, okay? But once we told the story, we'd no record of it. It was gone. And we couldn't go back and try and say, well, how can I reorganize that story? How can I do something with it, okay? And that's where I come from, Ireland, and Ireland has a really strong oral tradition in storytelling. So we had a lot of storytellers, and that's how, of course, we have an abundance of fables and myths and legends. And we have things like Tordiach Diarmid agus Grania. We have Oisin and Fionn McCool. They're all ancient legends and fables, and you have them too, because your civilization is very old too. Okay? Pardon? Exactly. And what we did too was we actually then, because Ireland was one of the first cultures to actually change and write up the Bible in our vernacular language. Okay? It was written in Gaelic, where other sort of civilizations wrote it in the Latin. Okay? We didn't, we wrote it in Gaelic. So we were always very close to our mother tongue, our vernacular language. And it's the same. I was only in conversation last night, and I only realized last night that it's a big difference between the spoken Arabic and the written Arabic. Yes. And they were explaining to me last night how difficult it was. So this, I think, as well, what's happened with the technologies too, a lot of the resources that were available, particularly on the internet, were in English, okay? And we have a problem as well. What we have to try and do is, we have a problem trying to keep our language alive in Ireland, because we were oppressed for about 800 years, okay, by the English. And they were trying to do a good job at trying to, suppress our language. So what we try to do now is, there's only pockets in the country where the English our Gaelic is spoken fluently, but Gaelic is spoken across all our schools. Every child has to learn Gaelic. So we have to try and keep it alive, and this is a way of doing it too. It's great, happy days. Okay, we have the internet working. Okay, so I can show you different things. But it's trying to see, well, what's the technology good for? Okay, we now have capabilities in the technology to be able to put voiceovers, take pictures, put them all together, and a lot of the software is free. So it doesn't matter what language you're speaking, and that's the big plus. It does not matter what language you're speaking. And the other thing is the devices now, I mean, this is what's causing the problem with the internet connections, because the fact that everybody has them, okay? And even all the kids have different devices. So we're saying, once you have something that you can take a picture with, then you're ready to do digital storytelling, okay? So maybe if I show some very, very simple examples. Okay. There's some examples here, and they're not sort of, glossy, finished examples. What these are, because I wanted to bring them, was to show you that this is possible even if your skill level is really, really zero, okay? What we did with our first year, so we have a Bachelor of Education program for teachers. Our first year students come in directly from high school. And they have great skills on Facebook, okay? They have great skills on Snapchat and Instant Messenger and all that, okay? And WhatsApp. But they don't have great skills for actually making things and doing things, okay? So they're using the technology in their everyday life, but they don't know how to use the technology for designing good learning experiences for their students, okay? And that's what we find. So what we had to do was, we're also very conscious that our schools may not have a lot of equipment. So we have to make sure that what we do with our students, they can do in all schools. So these type of things here, the typical thing that we have is some examples of how to recall and tell a traditional story. So these are our first year students. They went out on their first teaching practice, and they're working in small groups. So they have only learned the technology, and they're trying to use the technology with their students, okay, in class. These are elementary school children, okay? So they're not super glossy examples, but you'll see that once the students can do it, we'll talk about the skills that it enables them to do. So I just have a few examples here of what they did how they could retell a traditional tale. And you know yourself, especially if children have a problem, even to tell a story, sometimes they may get the sequence all wrong. And they may start off at this, and then they say, I think they went here, and I think they went here, and then, oh my God, I forgot that piece of the story. And there's no way they can go back and retell it, okay? So the sequencing is a big skill that people have to learn, okay? The other thing that we have big problems in Ireland trying to develop is oral language. How can you promote and develop the oral language of the children, particularly your children who are struggling with language? And then your high achievers, how can you encourage them to use really good language and improve on it? And this enables you to do it because you can go back and re-record over the story. So your first attempt is not your last attempt, and that's what's important. You can go back, you can listen to it. Like if I say something as a young child, or any child, or as an adult, if I say something, and if I don't have a way of capturing it and listening to it back, then I can't reflect on what I've said. So I don't know if it was good or not. But the technology now enables you to say something, it captures it, and then you can play it back. And then you can say, oh, I don't like that. I would prefer if I actually said something else. Or you can say to the child, is that a sentence? Does that make sense? Can you use a better action word? Can you use a better word to describe the dog? Was he a big, black, angry dog? Or was he a small, fluffy, gentle dog? So you can actually, deciding on what you want to build on and develop, you can decide what you need to do. So these are the examples of just simple, how to recall a traditional story, then adapting a story they already know, creating their own stories, how they could use like poetry, okay? Language teaching, and that's the Brihra is our Irish words, and I'll talk about how maybe you could use it for your Arabic. And then telling stories about things they are understanding in science even. People think that you only tell stories in English, but you should be able to tell stories, you know, that describe your science experiments. You should be able to tell stories about the mini beast hunt you went on around the school or things like, you know, mathematics and mapping exercises. Okay, so these are all stories that you should be able to tell and talk about. Okay, as I do my next run. Okay, we're going to have to come up with a better system for this. So what I'll do is I'll just show a few examples. Discard. And I'll play them from the internet and hope it works. Otherwise, I'll go to my backup plan. Okay, so these are some examples that we have in a folder I sent to myself. Okay, so we'll start with just things like sort of if you're talking about retelling a traditional story, things like the enormous turnip. As you can see from the handwriting, okay, these were. Oops. No, there's no internet connection.
Enormous turnip. One day a man planted some turnip weeds in his garden. He wanted them until they grow. He weeded the plants and looked after his garden. Then something happened. The turnip grew really big. It was enormous. He tried to pull it out, but it was too big. He asked his wife for help. They tried to pull, but the turnip would not budge, so they asked the little boy and the little girl to help. Even then, the turnip would not budge. Then they called the dog to help. Then they called the cat. They pulled and pulled, but still the turnip would not come out.
Okay, so what you can see is that what they've done is they've done their own drawings of the different parts of the story. So they obviously were told the story, okay? The objective here was to see could they retell the story and the sequencing. But the thing was they were able to do their artwork. You heard the different voices, so different kids were going to actually say different parts of the story. If you listened to them, they were actually speaking in full sentences, okay? They were actually using words like enormous. They pulled and pulled. So they were actually encouraged, and this is a learning unit in an elementary school class, whereby there were 2 children in that small group that actually had to get special language help. And by actually doing this and engaging in this exercise, they really, really worked on how can they develop their language. And they got the opportunity to say it over and over and over again. But the important thing, and that we've done research on it in the university, once a child can hear back what they've said, they very quickly can actually self-assess. And they can realize when they hear, oh, I've left out a word there. I thought I said it. So where they may actually be thinking they're saying it here in their head, they're not actually, it's not till they hear it back that they realize they've made a mistake. So that's what the technology enables us to do. It's like what they call, it gives us an object to think with. So once I say something and it's captured by the sound and I can hear it back, that recording becomes my object to think with because I can actually listen to it. I can say, oh, I actually left out that word. And if I'm working in a pair, we actually get them to work in a pair a lot. So if I'm working in a pair and I hear it back, then I talk with my friend and I say, is there something else I could add to that language, add to that story, so that I can, and then my friend might suggest, maybe you might say it was an enormous turnip. Or somebody, they might start off, you might say it's a big turnip. And then you as a teacher can intervene and say, do you know any other words that might describe something that's big? And they may say, oh, large, huge, gigantic, enormous. So now you're actually developing their language and they can decide which one they would like to use. They can actually say it many different times, and then sometimes when they start saying this, of course they say things it was an enormous turnip, okay? now you have to say, well, if you were listening to that story, would you be really interested? You know, and they'll say, no, not really. And you say, well, okay, well, what way do you think you might talk? And then they'll say, what sort of things? And you say, well, I have to sound exciting and make it interesting. Now you're focusing on the oral as well, and you're focusing on different types of communication. And one thing we really have to develop, and it's been highlighted as a 21st century skill that we really have to develop well, is skilled communication. Particularly when we're going to be working in global worlds, where we have to actually be very good at exactly communicating to somebody else what we mean, so that we're not misinterpreted. So that's why it's really important to actually develop this skilled communication. It also makes me very focused on my task. So that's what we do, and that's what was very simply done in that group. The software we use is free. It's called Photo Story. Okay, Photo Story. I will put it up. It's Photo Story. Photo Story. And you can download it free from the web. I'll show you how it works. It's very, very simple. And all they had to do was, before, do you remember, well, those of us who are old enough in the room will remember when we actually drew a picture, we had to go through the process of scanning it.
Yes,
Scanning it. Pain in the neck, okay? Whereas now, what did the kids all they did? Exactly, take a photo of their drawing. That's all they have to do, okay? So you take a photo of the different drawings, okay? Physically as well, you can actually decide, well, okay, you have your traditional methods whereby you say when you draw a picture, how do we sequence it? What comes first? What comes next? What's the middle of the story? What was actually the end? And then check the sequence. Is this right? Is this? And they may reorganize it, okay? So you're doing that anyway. Now you can take a picture, and then you're talking about as well, how do you take a picture? What's a good picture, okay? Is it like sort of, you know, to be able to take it properly? They very quickly as well, all the cameras have really easy crop tools, okay? So they can crop them. And anybody that says to me that a young child can't do this, I'd say, watch them. You just watch them in the supermarket, in the shopping malls, in the airport, anywhere, okay? My niece was only 3, and her dad came home from work, and she was sitting down, and he was exhausted. You know, when you come in from work, and he said she was only after starting play school, kindergarten. So they were saying, you know what, in kindergarten, everybody, you know, gets a star and everything, you know, on their way out. And so she was saying, and they don't realize that everybody's getting one. They think they're the only ones getting one. So she came home and she was playing, and she was giving her teddies stars and everything else. And she said to her dad, are you very tired? He said, yes. She said, oh, you must have worked really hard. He said, I'll get you a star. Okay, so she went off and she got him a star. She put it on his forehead. So he was saying, and then he was sort of, you know, jesting with her, saying, I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. So she immediately went off. Initially, she went out and she said to her mum, Quiva, she said, can I have your phone?
Take a picture of and to show it to her.
Exactly. She immediately went in and took the picture and turned it around and said, there you are, see? So they think in pictures too, okay? The nice thing about this story too is they could actually tell the story. Whereas before, without technologies, we didn't have the ability to capture that and for them to actually tell the whole story and listen back to it. Now they've made their own first story book that they can keep, okay? And that's the difference that technology brings to the game. And they can have it, they can put it, if you want, they can then send it to their grandma who may live somewhere else, okay? They can actually send it to, they can play it on Skype, now they can share their stories. And that's the big difference between, and you can keep it. So instead of, okay, we did make these big story books when we were in school as well, and then we'd keep them, and then they were all over the classroom, and then it was a case of where do we put them? And they're curling, and people spill their lunch on them, and everything, and somebody tears them, okay? So this way, you can keep it, and you have a record of it. What's really important as well is you can keep that record over time, so it can actually form a part of assessment.
Yes.
So it's formative.
The development.
Exactly.
Of their skills.
Exactly. And then you can actually keep it as your records to be able to show this child did actually develop in their oral development over the course of time. See, this is the evidence I have, okay? And you can actually see, look, initially they may have had a sequencing problem, but now look, they can actually, they can tell this story. Okay, it's a simple 3-character story or whatever, but you can actually demonstrate the evidence as well. So think of it not only as a way of children showing their learning, but a way of you capturing what they're doing, and then you can demonstrate it as evidence, and then you can use it for your planning. So then at the end of the year you can say, yes, these are the stories I have covered, this is what I've engaged in, these are the things the children made, and you have evidence to demonstrate the learning. So do you remember he talked about visible learning? It was mentioned. This is visible learning. This is making learning visible. And this is what we can do with the technologies that we couldn't do before. It wasn't that we couldn't do it, it was the fact that it was very difficult. All we could have was pictures, and we were actually rushed the children into trying to write. Now they can actually perform at a much higher level than was possible before. So we have this one. Then we have a thing, I think you can go on to where children then begin to develop their own story.
Made by second class.
Once upon a time, there lived a family of bumble bears who lived in a small cottage in the woods.
Now this is a story that children are not, they now have developed their own story. So they've gone that little bit stage further.
She wanted to capture the bumble bears and make them into her slaves.
Sure.
The witch planned to capture the bears using her fizzy snake army, so she sent them through the woods to find the bumble
Not
bears.
Grace, no.
The bumble bear family were going for a walk when they noticed a slimy, sugary trail on the forest floor. The bears were afraid and they decided they must hide from the fizzy snakes. They came up with a plan to get rid of the fizzy snakes by planting honey pots around the forest.
Okay, what's
One
important
by
there
one,
is the fact that I'll
snakes
stop it
travelled
there.
through the forest, where they fell into.
All I was trying to show there is that's the next stage where they actually go from retelling a traditional story, that they actually move on to developing and creating their own story. So they can actually, you can talk about plot, you know, the usual things you do about plot, what's the beginning, what's the middle, what's the end, where's the sudden twist in the story, you know, is there a surprising happening in it? You can talk about different genre. Okay, so this is the narrative genre you're actually working in now, okay? So they can actually then work on their story. And what we've found then from research is, once they have, they're in the business of actually having to draw the picture, first of all, create the story, draw the pictures, decide on the oral track they're going to have, the feedback. Then they can actually use that and they can actually do peer assessment and self-assessment. And your job then as a teacher is more to intervene and to actually sort of, if you're particularly focusing on, sometimes you might have mini lessons on descriptive words or other things you might engage in, okay? And then you may have definite learning outcomes that you want your students to actually focus on. So from that perspective, you focus on that using the digital stories. You can then move from where they don't actually just draw pictures, but where they're actually taking photographs. Okay, so that it's not always hand drawing. You actually then can move using the same software as well, where they're actually taking photographs. And things like they may talk about a story in the area and then go out and actually stage it and take photographs of. I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible because of the fact that I'm aware of some people not having as much technology available. When they actually then can go out into the area, and a lot of these stories that they're focusing on may be things like the mapping, or they may be going out doing mini beasts. I'll see no, there's no internet, I can't show it. This is the mapping then.
My name is Connor. My map to my school to write.
Now I want you to listen to this from the simple stage of, this is a mixture of early geography, mathematics, and trying to tell a story of how do I get from my house to the school. listen to the language, and I'll play it twice, okay? And you can use this then as a way of actually saying, well, what misconceptions do these various kids have? Who actually understands mapping? Who understands about giving directions, okay? And think of the difference if you're trying to do this normally in a classroom, okay? And if you're trying to work out, do they really understand sort of bird's eye view? Can they actually have a sequence in their head? Do they understand about giving directions about turning, okay? How would you have a record of what they understand? Okay, and this is a possibility of how you can actually have a record of what is possible. And listen to the language, because some of the children have really, let's say, different understandings of how you get from one place to the other.
My name is Connor. My maps to my school, to my class, towards my house. You turn left, you go up the road, turn right, then left, and then you go straight up the road, and then you're at my house.
Just you can hear the kids in the
My
background.
name is Andrew, and I have a map. First, I start at my house. Then I turn right, then I turn left, then I turn right, then I turn left, then I turn right, then I turn right, then I turn left, then I turn left, then I turn right, and I'm at my school. And this is the government style map.
Okay.
My name is Katie. My map is from my house to my school. I leave my house and turn left, and then I go straight ahead, and then I go left, and then I go straight ahead, and then I'm at my school. My name is Quiva. My map is from my house to the cinema. Straight ahead, and then I turn right, and then I turn straight past the tree, and then I turn left, and then I go straight ahead, and then turn right, and then I go straight ahead, and then I turn left, and then I'm at the cinema.
Okay, so...
My name is Connor. My map's to my school.
Okay, so when you're thinking of those kids, I mean, what's your impressions of the different children? What comes to mind first?
Perhaps some children gave more details than the others.
Yes.
Others were concerned with their tone, intonation, tone.
Some said left, right, some said turn, left.
Excuse me, sorry, hand mic.
Yeah. So the thing is, as you say, when the little guys, well, you can actually nearly hear the personalities of some of the kids. Yes. Okay. The thing as well is though, is the fact that you can actually then reflect maybe on the likes of Andrew, okay? Because when he was talking, first I turn left, then I turn left, then I turn left.
Not accurate.
No, it's okay.
Not accurate. Like
Yeah, not
audience.
yeah. That's do you want?
No, he wants us to speak through the mic.
Oh.
Yeah, that's yeah. It will be difficult. It's when he's saying first he said first I turn left, then I turn left, then I turn right, then I turn right, then I turn right, and you can say to Andrew, "Am I actually going?"
He can't find the direction.
Yeah, yeah. So he knows his left and rights very well, but of course he's so concentrating on his left and rights, he's forgotten to tell people to go forward.
Yes.
So things like straight ahead, forward. So at least by actually having a recording, you can actually reflect back on these things with the child. And they will very quickly, when you say, well, you can say, well, I'm following your directions, Andrew. And he'll then, because what happened then when we start doing that with Andrew, he started roaring laughing. And he said, oh my God, he said, yes, you're still on the same spot all the time.
Mistake.
Exactly.
And he will
Yes.
correct
Yes.
his story.
Yes.
But when I want to judge what he said, I must have connection between what he wrote Draw.
Yes.
He said,
Yes.
because he is spoke quickly in the first.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what's important. And that's where you say you have a record of both. You have a drawing and you have what they say. So you have 2 points of evidence. Now you can actually reflect with them and say, well, are you really following your map? And then they'll say, yes, so your directions are right.
For example, at the end, she said that there is a tree.
Yes.
We will check if there is a tree in the picture or not.
Yes.
Watch out.
And the thing is, that little girl then was actually focusing on what they call landmarks.
Yes.
And you can say, well, what was it Katie used?
Accurate in
Yes.
their description.
Yes. So then you can reflect and you can say, what was it that Katie was using that maybe you might use? And then they'll think about, oh, on my way to school, I actually see a red door, or I might actually see a shop, or I might pass actually the bus stop, or I might pass the post office. So now you're reflecting on what is it they're actually seeing on the way. So then they have the visual cues, the triggers. So now they say, well, could you or would you like to add anything to your map? And then they'll say, oh yes, I could actually add that to my map. And they'll add it to their map. And then once they add it to their map, they have the visual cue. So that when they actually come to talk about it for their story, they have the visual cue, but the difference with the technology is they can hear back what they said and they can self-correct if needed. So there's that ability of self-correction, self-assessment and peer assessment. So that can all be done independent of you as a teacher. So they can now progress much faster in their language development than they would have before now.
Excuse me, what's the name of visual cue?
A visual cue is when I see something on a map or I see something, and that's the thing as well, it gives me a visual cue I don't have to remember. I see it and it prompts me to say something. So they have this and it prompts them to say something, okay? So that's what that one does. So you can see how you can progress on that way as well, okay? So we progress then further and we can do things like what we call clay animations.
Play-Doh people by Tony Mitchell. Play-Doh people are floppy and fat. Some were a funny old Play-Doh hat. Play-Doh people have Play-Doh faces with blobs for noses and hair like laces. Play-Doh people have bendy legs, ears like pancakes, eyes like eggs. Play-Doh people roll up in a ball, then Play-Doh people and people at all.
So we now had a big impetus and a big motivation to learn the poem, okay? And there was a case of, well, how do we tell the story of the poem? So then, of course, they had to take out their Play-Doh and they had to make them. And if you hear the language they said, they floppy ears and bendy noses and legs like faces. So they have to actually really listen to the language and then transform the language into their Play-Doh figures and then have the confidence to actually say it as well and put it all together. So from that perspective, there's a lot of skills coming together. We wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't have the access to technology. And the nice thing about it is, although it's only something like 29 seconds, it really captures what they've done. And you can show it to parents. And they have a record of what their kid did as well. There's a big thing then coming, thanks a million, thank you very much. The big thing that's been developed as well is that people are talking about having, e-portfolios for kids, okay? So now you could actually have in that e-portfolio, you could have an example of, well, this is the type of work they did in the beginning of the year when they came. This is the type of work they are now capable of doing, in December. And then you could actually take examples at various points through the year. And now you have your e-portfolio of what developed. And you can keep it and actually have it for formative assessment as a way of explaining to parents as well what needs to be done. I mean, parents then can sit down with you and you can show them what they've done over time, and then they realize, oh, that's what needs to be done. It's simple technology, parents could actually, instead of the kids all the time being on, some of these apps that are such a waste of time, they could actually then say, well, maybe when we go on our day out for the weekend, we'll make a story, okay? And you could maybe even have a parents' evening, because the technology is really easy, that you could teach it to the parents. And then they could enjoy it too. And then say, well, then, because we have shown this, and what our students have done then is use the technology, and the parents think they're super, because what they do is, if there's somebody's, let's say their parents' wedding anniversary, they can put a photo story together. Okay, if it's a christening, they can put a photo story together. If it's an 80th birthday, they can put a photo story together. Because all you need is the photos, and put them together, and you can make a story with a voiceover and some music. So it has many applications. So now parents can actually, with their children, make things. So then you're increasing the homeschool links as well, okay? It's particularly important for us in Ireland, where we now have a very multicultural society. We used to just have a very sort of English-speaking society. Now we have multicultural. In one school, we could have children from 50 different countries speaking 38 different languages. So this is very important for us, because students can make their own stories and share them with one another, and they can put an English track on, but their parents can actually keep their language alive, and they can put the Polish or Swedish or Arabic track on the same story. So they can actually have the Duolingo as well. Okay, so that's the simple Play-Doh one, okay? What I said I'd show you would be the clay animation one. And this is in this folder. I don't have this online, so it's fine. Okay, should have it in the. Apologies for having to move back and forth all the time. And we have the digital storytelling. And it's this one. This one here is. I won't play it all. I'll just play a part of it. That's not English, it's Gaelic. Okay, in case you were wondering. Okay, it's Gaelic. Okay, and that's the Irish music, okay?
It was a sunny day in the forest. Fionn and Oisín were searching for Diarmuid.
Hey Fionn, no sign of Diarmuid yet.
No, let's rest underneath that big tree over there.
The fine Kilkenny accents.
Fionn and Oisín spotted a chessboard under the tree. They decided to have a game. Oisín decided to move the blacks, and Fionn decided to move the whites. Oisín looked up in the tree and spotted his old friend Diarmuid.
Fionn, I've never beaten you in chess before, but maybe today I will.
You'll never beat me.
They've made, yes, all the pictures, yes.
Oisín hoped that Diarmuid might be able to help him beat Fionn in the chess game.
And 9.
They walked around to the back of the quicken tree to fetch their magic spears. The game started with...
Okay, I won't play it all, okay? But you can see there, I had to download it as a small one from the web, because I was conscious the fact that the connection wasn't there, so that's why it's so small. That took quite a while to put together. What we were amazed at was that the kids wanted to make it so long, because we were saying, do you realize how much work is involved here? Yeah. And they were saying, well, no. We said, why don't you just tell a portion of the story? So initially they said, okay, they'd begin to tell a portion. But then the excitement just took over, and they could see, how it was going, and they were really enthusiastic. And that's what I'm saying, if kids really enjoy what they're doing and they see the fruits of their labour, they were seriously motivated. And they worked over break times to take all the shots, because the teacher was saying, I can't devote all this time to doing this. And they said, no problem, we'll take the shots ourselves. So what they did was they actually set up what they called a photo booth. So in a, let's say, a corner in the classroom, okay, this is, if you look at it, it's a very contained screen. So it's just like a box. And they made the background, okay? So they made the backgrounds, and things were, as you can see, some things were solid.
Yes.
So the only things that were moving were Fionn and Oisin, okay? And then you had the other guy in the tree. So they were the only things that were moving as such, okay? And how they stopped, the big thing that people make a mistake of, they try and hold the camera to take the shots. Yes. What do you think you should use? What will keep the camera in the same place all the time? Exactly, tripod. And they've become really inexpensive now. Okay, they used to be horrendously expensive. You can get them now for $10, okay, the tripod. And a tripod is a three-legged thing. The camera goes on top. Exactly. But his one would cost a fortune, okay?
A mini one.
You can get a tall one as well, and it adjusts. They have telescopic lenses, or telescopic legs, I should say. So it adjusts. And what they did was then is the fact that they left it up. So they knew it was at this particular height. So each time they went back, the only thing they did is there's a thing, it's called a shoe. And if you look at the bottom of all of the digital cameras, some of you may have noticed a little hole you have to screw in, and I'm sure some of you are wondering what's that for. Okay, what it's for is you just screw it into the actual shoe on the tripod. You clip it in. So they would just take the shoe off with the camera on it and put that away for safety in each evening. And they absolutely, every break and spare time they had, they were taking the photographs, because it's hundreds and hundreds of photographs in that, okay? And they actually then used Windows Movie Maker to put it together. So, and they practiced the voiceovers all the time because they wanted to make it, interesting. So now you're thinking of, how do I make things interesting? What language is interesting? How do I engage people in the story? And then you're focusing on the voice as well. How do I actually, use my voice to make it interesting? Yeah, of course. Of course, I'm delighted with more questions, the better.
Would you consider this as an individual project or as a group project? Because
a group.
A group. Since we're talking about hundreds of movements,
yes.
Hundreds of pictures,
yeah.
We're talking here about a tremendous effort, which might cause the student to feel bored, or he might quit it in the middle of working. So
yeah, no, this is very much a group project, and because of the, as you say, the amount of work that's involved, and you'll see some kids, you'll see different children taking on different roles. Some children are great at directing, some children are great at problem solving, sequencing. Some children will spot a mistake straight away and say, no, we need to go back here, this is out of sequence.
Between them.
Exactly. They have to cooperate. So there's a lot more skills being developed than just the storytelling perspective. So from that perspective, it's useful.
How much time did it actually take to produce the whole thing? Like, as a teacher, my mind's going, I love it.
Yeah.
But how much teaching time?
Teaching time initially, they actually, I'll show you the photo story, how it's done. It's really simple. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time to teach the kids.
Yeah.
The movie maker is really simple as well. It's gone much more simple than it used to be. And the kids adapt to it really quickly. The amount of time on this is taking the photographs. And
they can do it in their the free time.
Yes, and you have to just sort of say, they will. It's amazing. People say, "Oh, if you children won't engage." I find that children raise the standards so high themselves because they can see the benefit of their work, and they can see they want to share it.
They're feeling excited.
And they're proud of what they do too.
Yes, and it gives them new skills.
Exactly. And as well as that, some of them you'll see as well, like people say, are you worried about that they're not writing? Of course they're writing their stories. They're writing up the language, they're formulating the story, because they very quickly realise, oh my God, I need to storyboard it here. I need to know what comes first, what comes next, what props do we need, how do we incorporate it, okay? And then you move it all the way up along. flipping back, we're actually thinking of things like, well, how do we do things? You talked about the cross-generational gap, okay? What we're concerned about as well in Ireland is the community and sort of working with older people in our families as well and communities, and keeping that link alive, what we call social history, okay? And how can we actually look at social history in a way that the children will feel, understand what went in the past and value it as well, and have connections with their grandparents, etc. So this student went and they were looking at games. What's the difference between games now and games in time gone past? So that, and how do we actually capture that and tell that story? Okay, so there was a story done by this student, and she was talking to her grandmother. And how do you actually take things and keep them so that people can actually talk about them? Looking for the photo stories. This was all linked in my presentation. Unfortunately, we can't find them. Apologies then for people. Okay. Okay, I'll photo stories. Okay, history. Okay.
My name is Margaret.
I will hire it up.
In 1933.
Okay. So this is the grandmother, and this child put this together with her grandmother. Okay.
My name is Margaret. I was born in 1933. When I was a child, most of our games were played outside. My brothers and I would use our imagination to make up our games to play.
My name is Mary. I was born in 1997. I love to play inside in my bedroom with all my toys. My doll's house and my Barbies are my favourites. I have lots of dolls, but my favourite doll is called Fiona.
When I was growing up, we played lots of street games. My favourite was hopscotch.
I'll come back and explain that photograph now in a minute.
I like to play hopscotch too, but I don't use chalk because at my house we have a hopscotch playmat.
Skipping was another of my favourite games. It was fun because I could play on my own or with my brothers and sisters, and there was no shortage of rope to use.
Like my Nana when she was a young girl, I like skipping too. My skipping rope has a counter so I know how many jumps I've done.
This is a picture of me with my brothers and sisters. My favourite teddy was called Mousie.
My favourite teddy is my giant Winnie the Pooh.
Even though I didn't have as many toys as Mary has when I was growing up, I still remember having great fun playing when I was a child.
I play some different games than my Nana did when she was my age, but I think it's nice that we also have some games in common.
What's nice about that is the fact that that grandmother that's a few years old has since passed away, and now they have that photo story that they can keep as a memory. And that was so important because the grandmother was saying, she was, oh, I won't be able to do this. I will be, how will I do it? I don't know anything about technology. And Mary was explaining to her, you don't have to, Nana. You just have to talk and tell me about things. And then we'll take some photographs. So as you can see, Nana got her hair done for the photographs, okay? Because she wanted to look well. And then when she realized, oh, I don't have to, she was very nervous initially saying things. But then Mary was saying, don't worry, Nana, we don't have to keep that one, okay? We can try again, and we can do it again, and we can do it again, and we can keep doing it until you're happy. And when you're happy with what you want to say, then we can keep that one. And that's what the technology allows you to do, is try it over and over and over until you're happy with it, okay? And then they could put it together. And as you quite rightly said, what they're doing is she's comparing and contrasting what life was like now, what life was like then. And they actually used, you saw the original photographs of the 1930s, okay? But I pointed you out 2 photographs that looked black and white. Exactly.
يعني بدي احكي بالعربي in Arabic.
Okay, and you can tell me what they. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
هذا بيعزز المحاكاة يعني كيف ال.
Hang on for one moment. My Arabic just isn't up to it. In other words, I have none.
هذا بيعزز المحاكاة. التكنولوجيا بتخلي إنه هذا النشاط إذا الجدة بتحكي للبنت حكي تستفيد منه بس البنت، بس هيك بنقدر نستفيد منه لصف كامل. يعني الصف كله يتخيل إنه هذا الجد جدته ونشوف كيف بيحكوا الأحداث. رقم 2 إحنا مرات بندرب الرسامين، بندربهم بيجيبوا الرسومات بكتبوا النص كتابي، بنعطيهم صور للرسامين بكتبوا النص. هي بتخليهم يضطروا إنه هم يتعاملوا مع الكتابة، والكتاب بنعطيهم نص بدون رسوم، بنخليهم يرسموا كمان، بخليه يطلع على النص مرات بطريقة مختلفة، لأنه في فرق بين ما أقرأ الورقة هاي قراءة وبين ما أحاول أرسمها، فبصير أدور على التفاصيل وعلى حاجات تعطيه تميز. هذه فائدة التكنولوجيا. يمكن عنصر التوثيق مهم، بمعنى الجدي الآن حكت الموضوع، إذا وثقنا على التكنولوجيا بنقدر نستفيد منه مستقبلا وبظله ماشي معنا. المهم كيف أوظف هذا. لما سألنا وين بدنا نسوي هذه النشاطات، يمكن نسويها في البيت معنا، بس بضل في متابعة. كمان يمكن أخلي نفس النص كل الطلاب يرسموه، أصور وأودي لهم الصور، وخلي كل طالب يقيم الصورة اللي رسمها من خلال صور الآخرين كمان، شوف مين أكثر كان إبداع، وهيك نعطيه فرصة للتقييم الذاتي كمان.
Excellent. And that's the power of it. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's no other way we could have this living social record unless we did this. And as you say, that would usually be an exercise in a primary school classroom where they have to find out about games of long ago. And usually it's a dry enough exercise. You know, they go home, they find out the games, they list them, they come back in, and they talk about it. This way, they now can actually interview. And they could actually now, with the developments of technology, they could actually do it even if their grandmother was away. You could actually capture it by doing it via Skype. And you could capture that conversation. You could actually get the grandmother or the granddad or whoever it was to send photographs. And then you could actually put it together, and then they could work on it together. Because now we can actually share it in the cloud. Okay, and they could actually share the photo story and actually add to it for one another and keep sharing it back and forth. So we can actually make powerful human connections now that we weren't able to do before. And I think that's what we have to think of. People all the time think the technology is dehumanizing certain things. I think it's actually making deeper connections with our humanity. And we can actually hold on to things that we perhaps may have found difficult before. So if you can try and think of how can you actually get the children to tell stories of their heritage and capture that. The old stories that are in danger of being lost, okay, and getting the older generation to tell them. And maybe then if they tell them and it's the voiceover, maybe the children can illustrate them, as you say, okay. So how do you actually create that sort of dynamic connection? And that's what we should be doing, is actually deepening the connections because we have the ability to do that. Okay, the photographs that were